Thanks for the intro. And hello, everyone. Hope you enjoy WaysConf and save at least just a little bit of energy for afternoon talks. My name is Przemek, and today I will be talking to you about discovery fuck-ups, so some epic fails and priceless lessons we can learn from them. But before I begin, let me just briefly introduce myself. On a daily basis, I work as a senior product manager at .digital. This is a customer experience and data platform, so in short, it's just like a marketing automation software. I also teach product discovery in Warsaw at two universities, Warsaw School of Economics and Collegium Civitas. And pretty recently, I kicked off my newsletter where I share interesting stories about product discovery. But before I will dive into the main topic, I want to do a very quick poll. So, who has learned to ride a bike as a kid? I'd love you to raise your hands. And yeah, most of us did, but do you remember how hard it was at first before you mastered it? And it was extremely hard, because probably when you think back, you can realize that you failed so many times, that you fall off that bike so many times before you mastered it. And that happened probably more often than not. And learning to ride a bike is actually like life, because some of our most valuable lessons come from making mistakes, a lot of mistakes. And I love starting presentations with icebreakers, so I decided to share a pretty embarrassing story from my childhood. So picture me, I was 13 years old, and I had a very stupid idea to organize underground bike races. That was a stupid idea because imagine that this is a wall. The winner was who stopped closest to the wall, so we had to ride fast and stop close to the wall. Can you guess who won? That was, of course, me. I won by crashing right into the wall, breaking my both hands. This was the first day of holiday. It was awful summer. And that wasn't just a mistake. That was actually just like a pure stupidity. But if we treat mistakes as lessons, then I can say that I learned a lesson. I just don't ride toward walls anymore. I want to change like a topic for a moment. I want to just switch a gear. So we as human beings, we need to eat. So I can imagine, I can guess that some of you cook. Probably most of us cook. And who has cooked something 10 out of 10, like absolutely perfect during the first attempt? Please raise your hand. Yeah, less hands than bikes, but congrats. I love carbonara. I am like a self-proclaimed carbonara master. And I can tell you that nailing this dish for the first time is nearly impossible, because more often than not, it looks like just a scrambled eggs with pasta. But I believe that this is okay, because it is perfectly fine to make mistakes in cooking, because that's how we learn how to do things better next time and what not to do. So again, similarly to bike, some of the most valuable lessons in cooking come from fuck-ups. And while we are in this cooking context, I want you to think about product discovery, because that's what this talk is about. I want you to think about product discovery like you are throwing a dinner party. And what do you do when you throw a dinner party? First, you have to start with your prep work. So you check what ingredients you have, or which one you don't have. Then you should make sure that your friends will actually like what you're planning to cook. And then, as you are cooking, you taste test along the way. It's seriously worth tasting while you're cooking. When your friends eat, you just watch their reactions. And after dinner, you chat with them to see if they truly enjoyed the meal. What you also have to do, you have to just look for signs, like did they scrape their plate screen, or are they asking for the recipe? So that's what product discovery is all about, from idea to execution and then feedback. So it is about making sure that you are not just cooking, but cooking something people actually want to eat. So if we compare product discovery to throwing a dinner party, we can say that product discovery is kind of like an ultimate taste test for product ideas. And of course, it's not about just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Although I'd love to do that, that could be pretty fun. It is more like being a culinary detective. So you are not just cooking, you investigating what your diners really crave, how they like their food prepared, and whether they will come for seconds. So in the world of products, it is about making sure that you are not just building any random thing, but the right thing for the right people, just like in cooking. So similarly to the bike and cooking example, some of the most valuable lessons in product discovery come from spectacular fuck-ups. And it is a paradox because it is super painful, but incredibly valuable learning. And in product discovery, these fuck-ups are particularly costly because they affect time. For instance, time to market, time to value, also resources. So what you spend your money on, as well as opportunities. So things you wish you had or hadn't done. And today I want to highlight 3 most common discovery fuck-ups, probably ones that you made in your life, but maybe you're not aware of them. I also want to share 2 personal stories, but not about my broken hands. So let's dive in. I'm gonna talk about market misread, confirmation bias, and tunnel vision. So market misread, this is a classic mistake. This is when you develop products that solve problems that don't actually exist, or when you overcomplicate solutions to very simple problems. So it's like creating a Wi-Fi-enabled, AI-powered mousetrap with a mobile app where cat would do the job perfectly fine. And I just came back from Istanbul on Monday, and cats really do a very good job. So whenever you develop solutions without a real problem, or you misinterpret market needs, or you overestimate market size or demand, you fall into the market misread trap. And a prime example of that is the Segway. It was launched in 2001, and it was hyped like as a revolution that will change how cities were built. The inventor predicted they're gonna sell 10K units in a week. Do you know how many of these devices they sold? They sold just 24K in 5 years. And why? Because they misread the market. They solved the problem, and the problem was short distance travel. That most people didn't think needed fixing, because walking worked just fine for most of them, and bikes or cars for longer distances. Segway was pretty cool, but it was unfortunately pretty expensive, and frankly, but this is just my subjective opinion, it made users feel a bit silly. So the lesson here is that you have to make sure you are solving a real problem that people really care about, and then the solution fits into their lives better than alternatives. And by the way, when Ninebot acquired Segway, they launched scooters, and they sold 10 times more scooters in a year than Segways in 17 years. So that sounds like a pretty costly market misread, at least in my opinion. All right, let's move to another mistake, confirmation bias, and this is a very sneaky one. In short, it's about hearing what you want to hear. My wife always says that I am hearing what I want to hear. It is our tendency to search for, interpret, or recall information in a way that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. And in product discovery, it can lead to teams only paying attention to data that supports their opinion and ignoring everything else. And there's a cool example of that. In 1985, Coca-Cola, that was 99 years old back in the day, they really wanted to introduce a new Coke formula because they were determined to innovate in a cola wars. So they conducted 200,000 taste tests, investing nearly $4 million in a pretty comprehensive market research. They started with an idea: we need a new taste. And there's nothing bad in confirmatory research, but you just have to be careful when you start with a hypothesis that you want to validate. So the taste test showed a clear preference for the new formula. They were confident they had a winner. They focused on this data that confirmed their belief, but they overlooked a very critical element that was emotional connection consumers had with original Coke. So their launch wasn't successful. People seriously protested the change, and just after 75 days, they admitted their mistake. They reintroduced the new formula. So it's just an example of how fast, how quickly a product can just turn into failure when you don't meet consumer needs and expectations. And the takeaway from this story is to actively search for information that challenges your assumptions, not the ones that confirm them, because I believe it's the only way to save the product. And last but not least, from those three most common mistakes, we have a tunnel vision. And this is when you can't see the forest for the trees. So it's like being so obsessed with creating a perfect steering wheel that you forget that you're supposed to be building an entire cart or a sailboat. So this happens when you become so focused on one aspect of your product that you lose sight of a bigger picture. And in such situations, you simply ignore broader market trends, user feedback, or competition. And a classic example of that is Snapchat redesign from 2018. They were so focused on separating celebrities' content from friends' content that they overlooked how the whole change will affect the overall user experience. So the result was confusing interface that resulted in a major backlash from users, including celebrities like Kylie Jenner, whose tweet about this app wiped more than 1 billion of Snap's market value. What's also interesting, people were so frustrated that more than 1 million people signed a petition to revert the changes. So the lesson here is to always consider how changes to one part of the product affect the whole. So you just have to keep eyes on the forest, not just singular trees. So these three types of discovery fuck-ups, market misread, confirmation bias, and tunnel vision can derail even the most promising products. So just by being aware of them, you can try to avoid them and improve your discovery process in the future. And I'm gonna take you on a journey with my two personal examples. I believe they are pretty interesting stories. One will be related to doing the right thing, and another to doing things right. Or actually, these are gonna be examples of doing things wrong and doing wrong things. So I'm gonna start with the first one, and I will start with a lesson first, and then I'm gonna show you an example. It's gonna be about an MVP that went wrong. So who has seen this or similar graphic explaining how an MVP should or shouldn't be built? Please raise your hands. Most of us did. I want to analyze this graphic. So the top part shows the classic way of building a solution. it is all about the car. It's basically the old waterfall dressed up as an agile. So you are building the final product in stages. You start with tires, platform, casing, boom, you have a car. But is this really the best approach? And I believe it is. It might be. However, you have to be certain, you have to be sure about what you are doing, about the value you're gonna deliver, because otherwise you will spend ages building something no one needs, and that's just a lot of time wasted without giving any real value. On the contrary, in an outcome-driven world, you don't start with a car at all. You focus on solving a problem. In this case, this could be a transportation problem. So for instance, if you're trying to speed up a school run for kids, maybe a skateboard or scooter might work, or a bicycle for longer distances. And of course, it might not be perfect every day, but if it works most of the time, that's a win. And why does that matter? Because people don't buy stuff. Maybe some of you heard about jobs to be done framework. So it says that people hire products to solve problems or fulfill needs. And the key is to provide value quickly and often, so we can get a feedback fast and adjust the product. And I learned this lesson very hard in 2018. I earned some money on a crypto bubble, 2017, 2018, and I really wanted to contribute to crypto community. So my best friend and I, we quit our full-time jobs and decided to organize a conference. And we went big from day one. Our goal was to host 50 partners and 3,500 attendees. We picked the Kromhout in Amsterdam as the venue. It's extremely beautiful, extremely popular, but at the same time extremely expensive place in Amsterdam. We hired 4 full-time people plus a bunch of freelancers, and we just invested all we earned on crypto into production and marketing. We spent 8 months on organizing this world-class conference, and we focused mostly on production because we really wanted this event to look better than competitors. And back in the day, all other events were just looking ugly, so we thought people expect nice-looking events. And it looked nice, because everything was well organized, from booths, swag, scenes. We created a really, really good product. But look at that picture. Look how many empty seats are in front of the main stage. And that was probably around the noon. So what didn't go well? We created a product that didn't generate enough demand. Because we started with the final product, our world-class conference, instead of, for instance, local meetups or something else, just to validate that people actually need it. So we believed that our assumptions were right, and it was a very waterfall process. The worst case scenario happened. Our final product didn't provide as much value. We had 500 attendees instead of 3,500. People simply didn't care. And I seriously can't blame them. I should have spotted this earlier. So when I asked myself, how could I have spotted that earlier? By validating my assumptions. Probably by organizing smaller events, so by launching an MVP. Because if we had started with an MVP, we might have succeeded in a way that we don't lose everything, because for sure it wouldn't be as flashy, shiny, and beautiful as we did. But an MVP is about testing assumptions. So in worst case scenario, we would have realized that the event wasn't viable. We wouldn't do it at all. And I believe that's what MVP is all about. It's actually the best thing an MVP can do is to save you from the bigger failure in the future. So as a takeaway, I deeply believe that solving problems iteratively is better than building solutions iteratively. Because one gets you to the value finish line faster, while the other, it just pushes back this crucial validation moment further down the road. So Changes was a classic example of easy come, easy go. We had the resources, but we were doomed from the start because we didn't validate our main assumptions. So it's better to fail fast and cheaply with any kind of MVP than to invest heavily in a product that doesn't meet market needs. So as the last takeaway from this story is pretty catchy, but validate or die. And I don't mean that you will die like physically, but the business will most likely die if you don't validate your main assumptions. Okay, second story, shorter, because I have just 4 minutes left. The second story is about feasibility and stopping. Stopping is one of the most common mistakes because people, they are not consistent and they just someday they realize, okay, I don't wanna do it anymore. So in my second years of studies, that was 2014, I launched a pretty simple business, a hemp food brand called Hemp Foodie. Hemp, it's like a weed, but without THC, so no drugs, just superfood, everything you can imagine made from hemp, oil, seeds, protein, pasta. I started very small, 10K investment. I bought some product in Lithuania and the Netherlands. Then I repacked everything in my own labels. So that was like a classic validation technique called impersonator. It was going pretty well because that was the first such a brand on a Polish market. So sales went up pretty quickly. And I was a student on a second year of studies, so such money was insane for me. But I studied law. I'm not sure if you know the profile of a law student. It's a very specific person that believes that can do everything on their own. And food is not that simple business because it has lots of different domestic and European regulations you have to comply with. So I was not only repackaging everything, selling it, I was also a designer, all-in-one person. I've been creating labels, leaflets, etc. And I was a very creative designer because whenever consumers saw my materials, they could read such things as hemp food contains more omega acids than fish. And this is a true statement. This is a fact. However, it's a goddamn illegal. You can't write such things. I realized that there are some regulations that prohibit comparing different food categories, in this case, plant and fish. You can't do it. So, yeah, I skipped this very important regulation, and I had to pay a costly lesson because I got a fine from sanitary station. And actually, this fine wasn't very big, but I got scared. I panicked. And as a result, I decided to stop the initiative. At the end of the day, I sold it, but I'm not proud of selling it. I stopped the initiative. I simply gave up. It wasn't an issue to sell it because it was going good, but still, I just gave up and went and decided to go with a shortcut. So, unlike Changes, Hemp Foodie was done almost by the book. I validated, started small, grew organically, but here's the thing, I didn't focus on feasibility. Then when I was doing Changes, then it was all about feasibility without desirability. Here was the opposite. I didn't focus on feasibility at all. Then I stopped, I gave up, and that's actually a decision that haunted me for a pretty long time. So the lesson from this story is that it is fine to dream big, but you need to make sure you can actually make things happen because feasibility really matters. And product discovery applies not only to the problem space, it applies also to the solution space. And you also can't do everything on your own. It's going to be a little bit motivational, but after those few years, I realized that when I saw how the hemp industry is booming in Poland, I had this revelation that when you think about giving up, especially when you build products, you have to think about how far you come in the first place. Because sometimes I deeply believe that you have to kill your darlings, But usually you shouldn't. You shouldn't give up. If just one part of your idea fails, don't give up. Just pivot and do it differently. Because in this case, the idea, the business model, everything was valid. Actually, that's it from me. Thanks for your attention. And I hope you're gonna apologize for my small self-promo, but I mentioned I teach students about product discovery. I never have enough time for telling them what I would love to share. So I decided to fill this gap by writing a product discovery guidebook that's gonna be launched later this month. So if you'd like to learn more about discovery, you can scan the QR code, sign up for a newsletter, and I'm gonna share interesting stories and updates about the book as well. Thank you.